off. So we got to, let's try that. It might be too hot now. Let's do this. Okay. Is the audio working now? I think it should be. Of course, there's a 30-second delay or so. But, please bear with us here. We're we're fumbling around a little bit. I haven't really used it in this fashion before, but we're just trying to work out some bugs here. But I'll start over again. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for stopping into our stream today. Tom and I are we just like to chat every once in a while here, and we turn the camera on when we do. So we figured we'd let you guys kind of watch and throw your comments in as well. So before we get going too far, please somebody comment and let me know if the audio is working now. And I'll let Tom say good morning as well.
Yeah, hello everyone. I hope my audio is working. Breaker, how you doing?
Okay. I've got people saying no sound, but I don't know if that's a delay or if it's still not actually working. Hard to say. Anyway, I'll wait for some more feedback in the chat. This is a little tough because of the 30-second delay. It takes 30 seconds or so for me to see or for you guys to see what's actually going on here live. Looks like it's working now. People are saying yes, I guess. So I'm just going to soldier on. Okay. So we do have a little bit of an agenda here. Let's see. Somebody says audio is good on both. Okay, good. So we will soldier on. So we've got a bit of an agenda here. Hopefully you guys can see that on my screen. We've got the Tom and Rob radio hour for May 17th, 2020. And the first thing that we want to mention, and we like to mention this on all of our shows, we are not experts, as you can tell by us trying to get this thing started. What's that?
I don't see your screen.
Are you not seeing? Oh, are you not? Oh, you might not see it on Zoom, Tom.
Oh, okay.
It's only going to come through on the stream the way this is working. Sorry about that.
No problem. I see it
anyway
on the feed. I see it on the live feed.
Yeah. Oh, I can see your screen in your window, so I can keep an eye on it. Anyway, like I said, we're not experts, as you can no doubt tell here with our fumbling and bumbling here, but we'll get through it and we'll have fun doing it. So yeah, like it says here, we just like to play with radio and experiment and enjoy and whatever. So some of the things we say may not exactly be 100% correct, or you may not agree with them, and that's okay. Let us know in the chat what we've got wrong or what we've got right, and we'll go from there. So you can see we kind of picked a few topics to get started with here, but if you guys have anything that you want to talk about or have questions on or whatever, just throw it in the chat and we'll talk about it. But this is just to kind of get us started and kind of going. I know Tom's got some stuff that he's put together for this too. As always, he does a lot of research ahead of time here, unlike me. I roll out of bed and turn on the computer. So anyway, I guess do you have anything else to add, Tom, or do you want to just get started with our discussion?
No, I think we're ready to rock and roll.
All right, sounds good. All right, so the first topic is solar weather and radio propagation forecast. When will solar cycle 25 start ramping up? And I'm going to turn that over to you because you are the more of the expert on that stuff than I. And I actually defer to you for my space weather news.
All righty. Let me see if I can share my screen.
Okay.
Much better than looking at me. Have I got, let's see, I'm waiting for the delay to see if it's showing up.
It looks like it's coming through the stream. So I see the graph and everything. So we'll just see if it comes through. But it should. We just got to work through that delay.
Okay. I've been tracking the solar cycle quite closely this year because we've been in this drought where the solar flux index has been what I call it in the toilet, and meaning that the solar flux index has been less than 70 for 6 or 8 months, and we want it above 100. And here is another indication of solar flux, and this is right here the number of sunspots, which is directly related to the solar flux. And as you can see, and I wish that pop-up would stop popping up. What you can see is starting in 2010, the number of sunspots was increasing every month, meaning also that typically the solar flux would increase every month, meaning HF radio propagation would improve. And it did. And a matter of fact, I started doing my YouTube channel about 2013 because radio propagation for HF was great. It was fantastic. And you could get stations all over the world almost any time of the day. Well, after like 2014, the number of sunspots started decreasing and decreasing and decreasing until like 2018, there was like only one or two, if any. And in 2019, most of the year, there were no sunspots. Therefore, the solar flux was down less than 70. Propagation was not that good based on that one characteristics. Now, propagation has many other things that affect it, but that's one of the main ones. And what people, the experts, were saying about the solar flux index and the number of sunspots is starting in 2020, they would start zooming up, and there would be a astronomical increase, empirical increase in the number of sunspots. Well, that has not happened. And now, as you can see by this chart, it's going to take a while, like all the way through 2020 and into 2021. And I think down below this, yeah, here's the radio flux progression. And you can see here's like 60 or 70. And there we've been. It's almost flatlined for almost 2 years. Now, there have been days, maybe 1 or 2 days in a row, that it popped up to like 75. And you could really tell the difference as far as reception. So other people recently, as recent as a couple of days ago, said this is going to break out soon, very soon, within a couple of months. And it's going to go zooming up probably to the 80s and then it continue on, which is really better than what is being predicted here. This is the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center. This is their predictions, which they are pretty conservative. So I'm hoping that these things, the number of sunspots and the solar flux index will start going up rapidly in the next couple of months. But again, solar flux index is only one parameter that affects propagation.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of variables out there. And I know what you mean. I remember, back back around 2013 to 2015 or so, I was playing a little radio, and things were a little easier. Contacts were a little easier to make back then. But even now, even with the sunspots down, and of course I do, maybe a little more ham radio than I do shortwave listening. I'm still making contacts, just not as far. I'm getting California once in a while on 20 meters and things like that. But working Europe is sporadic at best, and that kind of a thing. So it's conditions aren't as good, but there's still stuff out there to listen to, and there's still, if you're a ham radio person, there's still stations to work. I was looking at the chat here, Tom, and Radio Wild is in there, and he has a theory. He says everyone's been looking for sunspots, and that's why there's no toilet paper. So,
Oh, that's a
Um,
good one.
yeah. So anyway, Nordlander is in there too, and he says at some point, could you share how you set up for this video chat? What software do you use to share your screens, and how do you get this set up through YouTube? It doesn't have to be this show. Well, I'll mention briefly what I've got here, and I guess it's working now that we debugged it a little bit. Is I'm using OBS, Open Broadcast Software, whatever that stands for, I think. And that's sort of streaming to YouTube. And then within OBS, I've got it set up so that I'm porting over to Zoom. So Tom and I are actually talking on Zoom meeting, and that is streaming through OBS. And that's one of the reasons my microphone didn't work at first, because I thought my microphone would come through Zoom, but it didn't. So I had to add a setting for my microphone into the OBS so that you guys could hear me. And there's a little, a few things you got to work out. And I thought I had them worked out, but we didn't right when we pushed the go live button. So there's a bunch of windows open on my screen, but it seems to be working. I can give you more detail at some other point, Nordlander, I guess, and maybe show some examples. Let's see. Radio Wild has another theory. He says, I have a theory to what it could have been used for. Oh, he's talking about the tube. I did a video on a tube, and I know Radio Wild is our resident tube expert. And I had emailed him a couple of weeks ago and asked him if he knew anything about it. And he's been doing some research in the background for me on this old tube that I've got that we're trying to figure out what it's for. And then I got to figure out what I'm going to do with it, kind of a thing. But anyway, we're caught up in the chat. So what else you got on the space weather stuff, Tom?
Okay, one other thing that has got me out of my depression. If you go to this website, r-core-dx.com, the gentleman that runs this has a lot of posts from either him or other people about actual receptions recently. And if you go through this, you can see there's a lot of activity out there that people are hearing. You just got to be there at the right time. And these posts give you indications of what's on, what frequency, what time of the day, and this goes on and on and on. So me, when I got this, because I get this via an email, I get this post of what's people have heard, and that encourages me that even though sunspots and solar flux index is down, reception is still there, and you can still receive a lot of stuff long distance. So check out this website. Again, lowercase hard dash core dot, excuse me, dash dx.com. Right? Is it
Interesting.
right here is the that's the website.
Okay. Yeah, I'd never heard of that website before. Is it does it just have propagation reports, or are there anything else in
No,
there?
this mainly is reports about reception.
Oh, that's what I meant.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so what is it? It's more of a mailing list than it is
Well, it's both. You can use the website to go online and read the reports, or up here you can subscribe to the mailing list, and then these reports are sent to you, and you get about 2 or 3 a day from
oh, okay.
different people that are on this website.
Okay. And is this mostly like shortwave reception, or are they doing
Yes, yes.
okay. Okay. That's a good one to bookmark. Okay. So we're still caught up in the chat. So anything else on the space propagation, space weather stuff? You got anything else, Tom, for that?
Oh,
Or
I don't have
are we?
anything else.
Oh, okay.
I was seeing if there were any more questions.
Okay. So I guess we'll move on. So I'll put the itinerary back up. And of course, that'll take a few seconds to catch up in the stream. But so topic 2 is something that Tom and I have talked about before. But I think this is a good topic. I think you could probably spend days talking about this one. Um, so is it SDR versus analog radio? We've covered this one before, but it's a popular topic. So let's dig in a little deeper. Like I said, we could probably go on for days, and it's almost a Ford versus Chevy type discussion in a way, but maybe not. I don't know. So go ahead, Tom. What do you think? What are your thoughts on SDR versus traditional radio?
Well, as I've been saying on my shows, maybe I've gone to the dark side because I have switched over to SDR. I mean, I have 50 or 60 analog type radios, but the graphical representations you get with an SDR and the appropriate software is just, to me, is mind boggling. To be able to see where signals are around the frequency you've tuned to. And some of them might be tiny, but you can see this little blip. And you go, okay, what's that? So I tune over to that. Like, whoa, there's something there. And of course, most of them work throughout the bands from, well, the SDR play ones work from like 1 hertz or 1 kilohertz, I don't remember which it is, to gigahertz. So you can use them for any frequency you want, depending on what antenna you have connected. And then, of course, like for instance, the software for the SDR play, SDR Uno, has 1,000 options you can change. And if you had an equivalent analog radio, desktop radio, you'd have to have 50 or 60 buttons and knobs to do that. I'd love to have that, but not practical. So I still use analog, and especially for portable use. But I definitely converted over to SDRs, good or bad.
Yeah, but Tom, real radios glow in the dark, right? I'm sure Radio Wild's clapping his hands over there now. But I agree with you 100%. There's so much flexibility.
Rob,
And yeah.
your audio has dropped down.
Oh, is it back again?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I was
Now, what was
with
the nasty remark you made about me?
It was, yeah. I said real radios glow in the dark, and I think Radio Wild, who's in the chat, would agree.
They also create a lot of heat.
Yeah, no, but I agree, Tom. There's with the SDR technology, there's really I don't know, there's just so much flexibility and so much you can do with it, and so much possibility that isn't even there yet. That that we'll be able to unlock as people write the software for it, so to speak. There's just a lot there, and I agree with you. On one hand, I like the SDR technology. I like to play with it. I really like using it. But for me, just the way that I approach radio is a lot of times radio is a passive thing for me in the background. And with an SDR, because it's visual, you have to pay attention to it. Otherwise, you're really not getting the full experience. I mean, you can turn on an SDR and let it play in the background. There's no problem with that. But I'll give you an example. With all this stuff going on, I've been working from home now for 6 or 8 weeks or whatever it's been. And I'm working right here in my Radio Shack. This is my sort of my home office too, if you want to call it that. And I found that I like having the radios on in the background to kind of simulate the noise of my office. I need that noise in background to kind of think, I guess. But when I have an SDR on, my attention is drawn to the waterfall, and oh wait, I got to tweak this filter, or I got to change this, or wait, there's a signal, I can click on that, like you said, Tom. Whereas if I turn on one of the radios behind me, which you guys can't see because I have a background on, but I can turn on, a scanner or a radio, and it's back there, it's on, it's making noise, and it's there, but I'm not distracted by it. And that's the case kind of even when I'm not working. Just if I'm out in the yard or something, I like to put a radio on, whether it be AM radio or a shortwave broadcast or a scanner or something, and it's just there in the background, and I don't have to look at it. It's just background noise. So for me, I think I still like analog radio for that. And I also, there's just no substitute for kind of sitting down and tuning a radio and just turning dials and knobs and watching meters and things like that. It's just not quite the same experience as you get with an SDR. Technically speaking, yeah, SDR is superior in almost every way. I mean, there's a few shortcomings, but you can work around most of those in the software. But just for overall experience, I like analog radios. So what are people saying in the chat here? I haven't been looking. Let's see. Nordlander says, as far as space weather goes, I've noticed a net, I go on 20 meters, the net controllers I never hear and cannot reach. All of a sudden I'm hearing them and can talk to them. Sorry, late response. Oh, no worries, Nordlander. So yeah, that's interesting. Things are going to fluctuate with the propagation, but maybe it's starting to turn a corner a little bit. Let's see. Radio Wild says the SDR allows the New England 80 meter AM guys something to complain about when single sideband operators work the AM window. Yeah, but they were doing that back in the 80s when I was a kid growing up listening to them. The swamp bucket guys were getting in their way. So that's nothing new, but it does give them one more thing to complain about, I guess. You're right. Let's see. SDR is a cool way to listen and see radio. Yeah, that's exactly right. Hey, Don is in here. Good morning, Don. How are you doing? Glad you're able to make it today. Are you heading out to do any POTA activations today, Don, or do you have to work? So I guess we're caught up for now, Tom. So anything else on the SDR versus analog? Anybody out in the chat have anything, or do you have anything else, Tom?
One other thing is, and this is again me speaking, is that the price difference between an SDR, say SDR Play costs $200-300, all the function it has compared to a table radio, a new one, which is going to cost you $3,000-4,000 to get even close to the capabilities. There's a big price difference.
Yeah, that's a good point, Tom, too. You get something like this, the SDR Play, if I can get it to show up, the RSP1. What does this sell for, Tom? Somewhere around $100?
Well, the one has been discontinued. It was replaced by the 1A, which had some pretty significant improvements, and it's $109 at ham radio outlet right now, for instance, in the US, or you can get it other places, and including from the manufacturer in the UK. So it's $109 thereabouts.
Okay, so yeah, that's what I meant. This is a 1A anyway, but so yeah, the 1A you can get for $110, whatever. And there's so much functionality in that box that, like Tom said, you'd have to spend thousands of dollars to get. You just can't beat the bang for the buck there. Some people complain that the software is a little hard to use for a newer person coming in to SDR if they're not familiar with radio in general or anything like that, because there's a lot of buttons and there's different software options that you can use too. For the SDR plays, there's SDR Uno, that's their package. But if you get a different SDR, there's other software packages, and the software packages are all different. So I think there's a bit of a learning curve, and for some people that throws them off a little bit. But some of these companies like SDR Play, they've been trying to work on that. They have these weekly webinars to help people. They have tons of help on their website and that kind of a thing. And there's a lot of resources here on YouTube. I mean, Tom's made a bunch of SDR videos over the years that are great references for anybody, um, just getting up to speed with the technology. So yeah, there's a lot of functionality, but it comes with a little bit of a price in terms of learning curve. But dollar-wise, I think you're right, Tom. You really can't beat it.
Yes, I agree about the learning curve. And thanks to Rob, I learned how to use the SDR Uno software for the SDR Play SDRs, which is for a new learner or new user of SDRs. That software is quite complicated to get it going. But if you have any questions, just ask Rob.
I don't know about that. I've kind of fumbled my way through it and got it working pretty well. But like I said, SDR Play they've been putting on some webinars and things recently, showing some of their advanced features that you can do with it too, which I need to step up and start doing some of that advanced stuff myself just to experience it. So let's see. I'll get caught up on the chat here while I'm thinking about it. Don says he's going out to do Parks on the Air either now or on a late shift. So that's cool. If you guys don't know Don, W1FYG, he's a fellow Connecticut resident here. I'm also in Connecticut. And he's got a goal of activating every state park or whatever park is listed on the Parks on the Air website for Connecticut. And I think he's over 80% of the way there. He can tell us in the chat where he's at, but he's close. He's going to have every park in Connecticut activated here probably this summer, I would think. So he's really gotten into it. He's a lot of fun to work on the air. So if you're a ham radio operator and in particular you like chasing the parks, then keep an eye on the Parks on the Air website for Don's call, and you can work. So let's see. He says used in ICOM 7300 versus Flex Radio. That's interesting. I haven't used either one of those radios. I know that a lot of people like the 7300, because it's everything all in one. And that kind of does tie into the SDR versus analog discussion. Because I think what it does, the 7300, at least for me, it rolls a lot of the SDR features into a traditional radio. So you don't need a computer to use it. So to speak. You can just drop that box on your table. You've got the waterfall, you've got the pan adapter, you've got a touch screen, you've got all the controls you need. And of course, it is a ham radio. It's not a receiver only, but it's affordable. It's usually around $1,000, give or take, usually under now. But if you don't want to use the computer and you want the transmit capability, it's a great sort of compromise between a traditional radio and an SDR, I think. As far as the Flex goes, I never used one of those. I know they have the Maestro setup, which have like a radio front end, so you have knobs and dials and a screen you can work with. Whereas in the past, the Flex radios were all, you needed a computer for the interface. So even Flex has kind of come a long way with that. The only difference, of course, I believe, and I could be wrong, is that the Flex radios are orders of magnitude more expensive than the 7300. So if you're really into it, Flex is the way to go. And again, I don't know bang for the buck or whatever, how much better it is than a 7300, but they are good radios. But if you're just getting started, then SDR Play is definitely the way to go. Like we were saying, $110, and you get, I don't know, 90% of the capability of either the 7300 or the Flex in a receiver, with just a little bit of a learning curve, and you're good to go. And then you can test the waters and see where you want to go from there. Let's see. Nordlander says he has the RSP DX. Afraid to mess with the settings in SDR Uno as I might never get the thing to work again. I really enjoy it though. I'll give you one tip, Nordlander. One thing that I did when I was learning it is if I got things too screwed up, I would just delete the software and reinstall it. And I was back to settings, and I didn't have to worry about it so much. But yeah, I really like the DX too. That's a great radio, especially for receiving long wave. They did a good job with the front end on that and the filtering. Radio Wild says one advantage of SDRs is that it can be used in a small space. Great for shortwave ham listeners to use in an apartment or flooding space with gear. That's a good point, Radio Wild. This is the radio. This is all it is. And most people are going to have a computer anyway that they're going to use. So you just buy that and hook it to your computer and you've got a radio, as opposed to some big console that you may not be able to fit somewhere. So that is an excellent point that I never thought of before. 74 ARB is in there. He says, sorry about being late. No worries. We're just kind of messing around here. So we're glad that you made it. Don't worry, you only missed the cartoon. The movie starts soon. Yeah. Don says, thanks for the explanation. Okay. So we're caught up on the chat. Any other thoughts, Tom?
Two things. One is, and I'm not trying to sell the SDR play. It's just my experience, and I've tried a lot of them. It's most cost effective and it has a lot of options. Is they have a very good up-to-date manual, and it's, I don't know, it's maybe 100 pages, and it's got pictures and everything to help you set it up. Unlike other software packages for SDRs, some of them have no manuals whatsoever, and you're just on your own, or go to some user groups and ask a bunch of questions. The other thing about being concerned about screwing it up, what you can do is you can say for instance, you can save your initial, when you start to program for the first time, you can save that setup. There's just an option, and you give it a name and you save it. Then when you start mucking around with it and you like it, at any given point, you're like, okay, I like the things I've done. You can save another copy. And you could do this as many times as you want to and go back to those, just like when you do a Windows update, you can always do a restore. So that's how you can not worry about screwing things up and not getting it to work again.
Yeah, those are excellent points, Tom, too. And I never thought about doing it that way. But yeah, because with software you have all those options. And like you said, we're not necessarily trying to sell SDR play. It's just what we're most familiar with. I know there's other options out there. I've heard good things about the Air Spy. Do you have one of those, Tom?
No.
Okay.
No.
But I've heard good things about those as well.
Yeah, they're very popular.
And one of these days I've got to get one and try it. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. But I think, and then there's a couple of other options out there too that might be a little, well, there's always the SDR dongles, but those are kind of hit and miss, the ones from eBay or Amazon. But there's other options out there. I just think the SDR play right now is the best bang for the buck. And like Tom said, they have the most help out there in the form of either user groups, manuals, or just support from the SDR play team.
And if you go to their website, they have a section of information and a listing of videos on YouTube. And Mr. Rob here has got a whole bunch of them that they have on their website, the links to them on their website.
Yeah, among others. There's plenty of videos out there that people have made that are helpful. So if you're a video-oriented person, which a lot of you probably are since you're here, then that's a good resource too. Okay, so SDR versus analog. Any final thoughts on that, or?
Nope.
Let's see. KK6USY is in there. He says, have either of you tried to fix the latency with SDRs? I don't have too much of an issue with it. I don't see a huge latency. And again, and I'm not going to necessarily speak for Tom, but I think both of us are primarily using ours for kind of more receiving or sort of casual type in the shack type listening. So any latency isn't a huge deal for us, but I don't notice too much latency, and maybe that has something to do with the computer you're running on. Maybe you can give us a little different example. And then David Sigmund is asking, what antenna are you all running? Is it the same as your main rigs, or is it something different? I hate to add more to the farm as it is already crowded around here to start with. KC4 SOT. What are you using for antennas, Tom, when you use your SDRs?
Okay, you're going to embarrass me. I counted them this morning. I have 13 antennas outside.
Wow,
And
awesome.
that's because I review antennas on my show. And
Oh, okay.
I always tell myself, okay, I'm going to put this up temporarily, and then I never take them down. So I keep adding to them. But the two or three that I use for HF, I use a G5 RV, and I use a 31-foot vertical antenna from MFJ, which I'm going to show you in a few minutes. And for VHF and UHF, I just use a plain disc cone antenna. Now I have other antennas for specific frequencies, such as the local Coast Guard frequencies and things like that. I also have some beam antennas for working satellites, amateur radio satellites.
Oh,
And so it just depends on what I want to work.
yeah. And I'll kind of go along with Tom. I don't think I have 13 antennas, but I might have 7 or 8. Um, but I just use the antennas that I use with my ham equipment. I just disconnect it from the ham equipment and run it on the SDR. And like Tom said, it depends on what frequency I'm kind of tuning into. Although a lot of times if I'm just casually listening or experimenting with something and I'm not worried about um, getting the strongest signal possible, I've found that my 40 and 80 meter fan dipole that I have up that I use on my HF rig works just fine on my SDRs or any of my radios really for receiving anywhere from 60 hertz or whatever, 60 kilohertz, all the way up to VHF and UHF. I've done the ADSB reception on that antenna, and it works fine for that. But if I'm interested in a specific band or really getting the most performance out of it, then I'll connect it up to one of my other antennas. So, for instance, if I wanted to do something with 6 meters, I have a 6-meter 5-element Yagi up. I would hook the SDR to that. The only thing to keep in mind is that you want to make sure that if you've got it connected up to an antenna like that, you don't have a transmitter nearby and you're going to overload the radio. You can damage it. So I'm very careful with that. Some people have antenna switches that you can use. That helps if you want to use the SDR as a pan adapter, which we didn't really even talk about because I don't do that here. I don't know if Tom does, but
No.
but you can buy that MFJ switch, automatic SDR switch. I forget the model number of it, so that you can protect your SDR if you've got a transmitter in line, that kind of thing. So there's definitely some options out there. And I'll say one last thing on that is that I've even just used a piece of wire for an antenna, just kind of rigged up to a connector, just for testing purposes, and it works. The SDRs are pretty sensitive receivers, so as long as you got something on there, you'll probably hear something.
I don't know if you can see
Oh,
this, but
yep.
this is one accessory that you're going to have to buy. And
Oh, yeah.
this is an adapter to go from an SMA connector, which most of these have, to your standard PL239. So keep that in mind. Most of these SDRs use this tiny little SMA connector. The latest RSP DX has 2 of these and antenna connections plus the old style B and C.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've got a few of those kicking around too. Um, let's see. So we got. Let's get back to the chat, I guess. 74ARB says, any experience with RTL SDR dongle? I'm in the approach path of Newark's JFK and LaGuardia airports and would like an inexpensive way to get into SDR and do a bit of ACARS beacon tracking. I can tell you that when I first started with SDR, I did buy one of those dongles, and the only thing I used it for was the ADS-B tracking, the airplane transponders, and it worked for that. I'm about 100 miles or so northeast of New York City, and I was picking up plenty of planes with it. But when I tried to use it as a receiver, even at VHF, whatever, they're supposed to be okay up at VHF, I couldn't get it to work. And it could have been that particular dongle might have been messed up because, I got it from Amazon or eBay. I don't remember. And the quality on those, some of them aren't that good. So I didn't have any luck with it. And that's when I moved on to the SDR Play. I wanted a real radio that could cover all the frequencies. And that's when I bought my first SDR Play, was after doing that. But a friend of mine told me once with those dongles is that when you buy one, don't just buy one, buy three, because you don't know if they're going to work. But if you were to get, and again, we're not trying to sell SDR Play, but if you were to get an SDR Play or an AirSpy or one of the better quality SDRs, and I think you wouldn't have any issue picking up anything that you want there. Trying to get the aircraft stuff. Let's see. Larry says SDR Play is way ahead of others. AirSpy comes to mind when it comes to lack of instructions, i.e., SpyVerter and U-Loop. Yeah, I haven't used the AirSpy stuff at all, so I'm not familiar, but I guess we'll take your word on it that they're maybe a little harder to use, or maybe the documentation isn't as good. Let's see. Don says he was thinking of using an antenna switch. I've been thinking about that too. I got to get one of those MFJ switches one of these days. David says, I'm close to that number. QRZ page shows most of them. So basically a wire works. Well, oh, you must have that many antennas. Okay. A wire works well for SDR. Thanks for the input. Yeah, it works well enough. I've taken my SDR Play with me on vacation and just hooked a wire up to it and was able to get stuff. There's Tom's RTLSDR.com. Now those are different than what I was talking about. Those are a little better, right?
They're a
Tom?
lot better.
Yeah, and those are.
I have tried. I like you started with the $15 one that was originally used to receive TV, and
Yeah.
I was not impressed. The design and maker of these sent me one for review, and these are excellent. Above 30 megahertz.
Okay. Does it cover
30
HF?
megahertz. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Does it cover HF at all?
It does, but the signal is greatly reduced. But it will receive HF. It's just you're not going to get as strong a signal as you would on a SDR Play. And these are, like you said, these are $25. And
Okay.
they're very high quality. You can get them off of Amazon. And like I say, above 30 megahertz, they work excellent.
Okay, so that might be an option for you then. I think it was 74 ARB was
Right.
talking about that. So yeah, that's a good point, Tom. So let's see, KK6USY, he says, if you're using the SDR Play along with your radio, there is a lag in my computer is pretty good, but my internet could be better. Okay, so that's different. So you're using yours as a PAN adapter, I'm guessing. And like I said, that's not anything that I've done here. I should try it at some point, but kind of to tie in some of my statements that I made before about analog versus SDR. I tend to I don't need a PAN adapter. I listen to the radio mostly. So I'm not worried about watching the the signals, so to speak. When I do want to have that experience, I hook up the SDR play and go that way. But I can see where if you're a ham and you really want that, pan adapter, so to speak, and you have an older radio that doesn't have one, then yeah, there may be a delay. I'm not sure, and it may depend on what software you're using and whatnot. So I apologize, but I can't help you with that. You don't have any experience with that, do you, Tom?
No, I don't. None at all.
Okay. That's something I need to try at some point. I have older HF gear. I have an old ICOM 746, and it's not, the only way I can do it with mine would be to use the MFJ SDR switch, and then I'd have to get a cat cable and hook up to my computer and have rig control and all that. And I don't know. I've got a lot of other projects going on, so I haven't bothered with that yet. But yeah, if I didn't realize there would be a lag, but if there is, then that might be another reason to not do it. I don't know. But anyway, sorry, I can't answer that question a little more. So Just in Time is in here. Hello. And let's see, KK6USY is also saying, I use a doublet cut for 80, best FM radio signal I have ever had in my location. Yeah. And that's, like I said, that's kind of what I get here. I don't have a doublet. I have a regular fan dipole, but boy, does that thing pull in signals on pretty much any frequency. It works just fine, at least for receiving, and for the type of receiving I do. I'm not out there trying to get every last fringe station. So it seems to work okay. All right, so we're caught up in the chat for the moment. Anything else on this, Tom?
Nope, I'm ready to move on.
Okay. Let's see. I even forgot what our next topics were. Okay. Topic number 3 is buying used radios. Where do you find them? How do you find the best deals? And what do you look for in a radio? So what do you think, Tom?
Okay, I'm going to show you some places where you can buy them, and then I'll let Rob discuss how you get a good one versus a bad one. Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. And then I will go to, I got all this other stuff in my way I can't see. I got the menu for this program is covering up all my other links. Let me close some of my links. It'll slide things over. There we go. Okay, the obvious way, not the best way, is eBay. There are a bazillion radios on eBay, both new and used, because some of the commercial outfits actually advertise on eBay. So that's one of the ways, most obvious way. Again, maybe not the best. The next one, and I'm going to close that one to move it over, is qth.com, which is mainly for ham radios, but you don't have to be a ham to buy from them. And here's their page of classified ads. And here's by category or ads placed today or yesterday or all ads sorted by date. So I can just click on this briefly. And these are typically radios and radio equipment advertised by ham operators. And it could be cable for your antenna, it could be all kinds of things. So that's another place. I would say, and I'll let Rob chime in here, I would say for the most part, you can trust these people. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned QTH. A friend of mine here in town, he buys and sells on QTH. I don't want to say quite a bit, but regularly. He likes to, he'll get a radio and use it for a couple of months, and then he wants to try something else. So he'll sell it on here, and he'll usually buy something here too. And he's had pretty good luck, although He's also, you gotta, how am I trying to say? I know I'm kind of stumbling over my words a bit here. He's, he's good at being able to kind of vet the candidates, so to speak. One of the things he's told me is that with a site like this, you want to make sure that you use PayPal, because PayPal has sort of that built-in insurance. Now you're going to pay a little bit for the use of PayPal because PayPal takes a commission, but the way he explains it, and I tend to agree with him, is that it's sort of like insurance for the purchase, especially if you're spending a few $100s. It's it's worth it. And usually what he's found is that if the person is willing to do the PayPal, whether they eat the cost of PayPal or they make him, they're usually an honest person. Plus, if they have a call sign, their name is associated with the sale. So he hasn't really had any issue either buying or selling through this website when using PayPal. But again, he's gotten, when he lists a radio for sale, for instance, he just sold a radio last week, and he put it up there, and he got 6 or 7 people email him, and not just say, ask questions about the radio. Email them. They wanted to buy it. We're serious, but we need to wait for our stimulus check. So can you hold it for us? Or I think one guy even was saying, "Oh, I'll give you $100 now, and I'll send you the rest later." And of course, those are things that he just turns down. He politely responds to the email and says thanks, but no thanks. So you got to kind of weed those out. Make sure you use PayPal, and then you're usually good to go. Make sure the person has a call sign. Look them up on QRZ, that kind of a thing, and you'll do just fine with a site like this. Whether you're buying ham equipment or, like Tom said, other stuff, receivers, accessories, things like that.
I don't know if you, Rob, if you know, I don't know, but I think to sell stuff here, you have to have a call sign.
I don't remember. I only ever listed anything on there once, and it was a couple
But
of years ago. So
I noticed all these listings have a call sign, which again is a little more credibility because you can go to the FCC database and find out information about that call sign. And if the guy says, I'm shipping it from Kansas, and the FCC database says he lives in Alaska, if it's not a case where he's moved, you kind of like, wait a minute here. So it's a little additional check you can do on these people that are selling.
yeah, that's a great point. But yeah, I think you do have to be a ham. But again, I don't remember because I signed up for it a couple of years ago and haven't sold anything on there since.
Okay, the next one, I think I have one more. Yeah, Universal Radio also sells, and they sell mainly new equipment, and they've been in business for quite a long time. They also sell used equipment, and some of their used equipment, as it says right here, have been checked and carry a 60-day limited warranty unless shown as is. And here's just a quick listing right here of all the stuff they sell. Again, they buy stuff from their customers who are buying like a new radio, and then they sell it on this on their website here, or they may just list it for the person and get a small commission for listing it. This is another place where they have quite a bit of equipment for sale, used equipment, all different categories, test equipment, software, cables, antennas, goes on and on.
Interesting. I didn't realize they had a used section there.
Yeah, they've had it for years.
Oh, okay. I'll have to take a look at that.
And it's Universal Radio.
Okay.
The web address is universal-radio.com. And then that'll take you to their main website showing you all the stuff, new stuff they sell. And then one of the things you can select is used and demo equipment.
All right, cool. Wow, I never knew they had a used section. I'll have to take a look at that.
That's all I have.
Okay. Um, a couple of places that I haven't used for radio stuff, but I've used it for other things. Is Facebook Marketplace is is kind of an up and coming, almost like a replacement for Craigslist, I'd say. There's a guy I know here locally that he travels for his job, sort of around New England, I think mostly, maybe East Coast. Anyway, whenever he would go out on the road, um, he would check Facebook Marketplace for the area that he was going to, and if he saw some ham radio stuff at a good price, he'd look at it when he was done with his job, or maybe before he was going to his job or whatever. And he was having a lot of luck with that, getting really good deals, and it's not quite as solid as like QTH, like what you were saying, Tom, because obviously the people on Facebook don't need to have call signs. But on Facebook, generally you're using your own name and your own identity when you're listing stuff. So people are a little more honest. It's not quite as anonymous. At least that's what he told me. And a lot of times what he was doing is, there would be a ham in the family that would pass away. And this was the widow or the kids or whatever, just trying to sell the stuff. And they didn't necessarily not know what it was worth, but they just wanted to get rid of it. So they would put a decent price on it and that kind of a thing. And again, like I said, because he traveled around so much, he was able to just, look in all these areas outside of our local area here and kind of grab a bunch of stuff that way. So he had some good luck there. Some people have had luck with Craigslist. I haven't seen a lot on there. I think a few guys I've talked to over the years have found more like estates. Somebody will list a ham estate on Craigslist, and then they can go buy the whole estate, kind of a thing, which is another way um, most of the time, I guess, when I was buying used stuff, it would be at ham fests, which we obviously can't do right now. but a lot of times I would just let the guys go buy up these estates, and then they would bring them to the ham fests, and sometimes you can get a decent deal. It depends on the seller, and it depends on how much they paid for the stuff. So that's again, those are some main places that I would get stuff. Although I guess one last place I'll mention is just your average yard sale. We call them tag sales here in Connecticut, but Saturday mornings was kind of a big thing for a while. For my wife and I, we got hooked on this with in-laws. We would go out on Saturday morning, we'd go to breakfast, and then we'd go out and we would just drive around the county and look for tag sales or yard sales. And we'd stop and get stuff. Especially when my son was first born, could find a lot of baby clothes and things like that real cheap, and every now and then you'd run into some radio equipment at a tag sale. So again, I don't know if that's the best place to go shopping specifically for radios, but if you're somebody that likes to go out and do that, keep your eyes open for radio stuff, because you never know. So in terms of how to look for good equipment, that's a tougher subject, I guess. And I didn't put together any nice slides or bullet points like Tom did here. I just kind of wanted to wing it off the cuff and then see what you guys think out there, because everybody's got a little bit of a different experience. But over the internet, it's a little hard to tell. But I guess kind of what we were talking about, if you go to a quality website like everybody is representing themselves as ham radio operators, and you look for the descriptions that are worded with proper grammar and that kind of a thing, and the people that are willing to work with PayPal and that sort of thing, you're probably going to be okay. What my friend that buys on QTH says a lot too is you want to correspond with them a little bit through email. Don't just make them an offer and then accept it and go on. You want to go back and forth, a couple times with them through the email and just read through the email and kind of read between the lines and you can kind of pick out a little bit about how the deal might go based on the way that the person articulates themselves in the email, kind of a thing. eBay, it's tough. I don't buy really anything ham radio related on eBay. I got burned buying and selling stuff on eBay, so I don't bother with it anymore, really, for like used equipment, just because there's so many bad players out there. But if you're out in person, like at a ham fest or something, and you can touch and feel the radio, I mean, obviously what you want to look for is cosmetically, is the radio clean? If the person selling it doesn't mind you playing with it, turn the controls, push the buttons, make sure they don't stick, that kind of a thing. Make sure everything is working. But even sometimes cosmetics aren't the whole story. I I bought a meter one time, an SWR meter. I needed one, and the guy selling it looked like a reasonable guy. It was at a local ham fest. I'm fairly certain he was a ham. He had a lot of ham equipment he was selling. The meter itself was cosmetically perfect. It came with the original box. I took it out of the box. I looked at it. All the controls were great. The guy seemed like he was, a regular seller. His asking price was fair. It wasn't overly low or overly high. We made the deal. I bought the meter, got it home, and it didn't work right. It was really flaky. It would sometimes work, it sometimes wouldn't. So I took it apart, looked inside, and it had gotten hit by lightning. The little circuit board that was inside was burned. So luckily, it was kind of almost like a fun little experience. So I guess the point of the story is, though, sometimes you just don't know. And that's one of the risks you take when you buy used equipment. So you want to be prepared for that, either to have a situation like that and either fix the equipment or be able to absorb the cost of maybe having something that doesn't work, or use it for parts or something like that. Now, this was a $50 meter, so it wasn't the end of the world, even if I couldn't get it to work. But obviously, the more you're going to want to spend on a radio, the more time you're going to want to spend vetting it. Especially if you're at a ham fest, make sure it works, that kind of a thing. And if you're buying it online, like I said, if you go through PayPal and you have an issue, you can invoke the insurance policy and that kind of a thing. But try to work with your seller too. If you get something that doesn't work or doesn't work like you should, then try and work with the seller first and see what's going on. That kind of a thing. But you can't always know, and so you got to be prepared to get something that isn't going to work. A lot of times when I try and buy used equipment, I try and of course most people are going to do this, try and get the best deal that you can, so that if you do have to cut your losses, maybe you can sell it honestly and say, well, this radio doesn't work, and maybe you're only out 50 or $100 or something, whatever. But that kind of a thing. Now, what was interesting about the story I just told about the meter that I bought, I took the meter home, I fixed it, I made a video about it. It's on my channel, and it still works. It's over here on the shelf. So that was kind of a good thing. And then the next Hamfest I went to, I saw the same guy there selling stuff, and I kind of confronted him. I was a little angry. I don't really get angry, but I saw him there, and I walked up to him and I confronted him. I said, "Hey, did you see this thing that got struck by lightning?" He supposedly said he didn't know, and he told me that he gave me his name, and if you want, send it to me or see me at the next Ham Fest, and I'll give you your money back, that kind of a thing. So, whatever. We worked it out. I told him I wasn't upset after I talked to him and that kind of a thing. But just be prepared for that if you're going to buy used stuff, because the cosmetics and the operation of the knobs and things don't always tell the whole story. So what do you think, Tom? Any thoughts on that? Or
Yeah, I got a couple of comments. There are also key phrases to look for. I check eBay every morning for radios that I could buy and do a show, and I spent about an hour on it. And I look for in the listing key phrases. For instance, um, if they say it works, and that's all they say, it works, that to me is like, okay, I'm a little suspicious of this. So I will send them a message and say, please explain what you mean by it works. And if they respond, okay. Another one is, what I see a lot is, I didn't have an antenna to test it. Oh, come
Yeah.
on now. All you need is a piece of wire. So that totally turns me off. One other thing is, I got another thing. You mentioned it, and I want to share it. I forgot about it. Is you mentioned Craigslist,
Oh,
and I watch Craigslist not as much as I used to, but the one advantage of Craigslist is you can narrow it down to your area. Therefore, you can go see it, just like you had illustrated, touch and feel it. And if they say, well, I don't have any great place to hook it up, you got a bummer. If they can't let you at least turn it on, see if there's something that comes out of the speaker, touch your finger to the antenna so that you can get something, it probably doesn't work. So I have bought several older radios, tube type radios, locally within 20 miles of me, which turned out great and was very successful. I have gone to look at a couple of them that I knew they were junk. So that's some other things to keep in mind.
interesting. Because every time I've looked on Craigslist, I never really see anything in my local area. I'll punch it in and there's not a whole lot, and then it'll come up with surrounding areas, and there'll be stuff there. But for me, there's people aren't selling radio stuff on Craigslist around here for some reason, or maybe I'm just not seeing it. But it looks like you got a fair amount of stuff there.
Now, this includes probably up to 100 miles away,
Okay.
this particular listing, because you are correct. Today, when I looked within 20 miles, there was practically nothing.
Yeah, but even still, like for me, I'll put it in the Hartford, Connecticut area, and I won't see anything. And then I'll try. There's three sections for Connecticut, I think: Hartford, Eastern Connecticut, and New Haven. And I'll go in there and I might see a couple things that are listed for those areas, and then I have to really expand more towards New York City or New Jersey or that kind of a thing. But I'm not going to drive that far.
No,
And certainly not through New York City to go for radio stuff.
no.
but um, but yeah, like I say, I don't see a whole lot here. Even Western Massachusetts, I'll check sometimes, and I don't see hardly anything. But again, I'm not on there a lot looking for stuff. If somebody's on there every day looking at stuff, they're going to see more than I am. But even my buddies that buy and sell here, like I said, they have better luck with QTH or Facebook actually lately. So let me see. Let's check the chat. I haven't looked in there in a while. Let's see. K1WQK. Good morning. Nice discussion. That is my sister. So she's joined us in here. How's everything going with the motorcycle? Is Dwayne sore this morning? Let's see. Ray Wild says, I have good luck with Facebook Marketplace. Yeah, I haven't really used it so much. I saw advertised in there a motorcycle that I ended up buying, but the motorcycle was at a dealership. The dealership was using Facebook Marketplace for just another advertising outlet. And then I looked at an SUV a couple of months ago before all this pandemic stuff started, and the guy was advertising it on there. I went and looked at it. I ended up not buying it because I didn't like the condition it was in, but it was a good experience. The guy was fine, and the SUV was fine. It was just exactly what he advertised it as. I just didn't I thought it wasn't quite as bad as he said, kind of a thing. So Radio Wild says, works the last time I used it. Has the integrity of a flat tire or a round camshaft. Yeah, I know. And that's a good point too. Like you said, Tom, one of your keywords, used the last or works the last time I used it. If you hear that, chances are something's up with it, kind of a thing. Not always, not always. But yeah, if somebody brings something to a ham fest or lists it online and can't be bothered to at least plug it in before they list it for sale, then I don't know. Maybe they don't really want to sell it, kind of a thing, or maybe something's wrong with it. Great tips for buying radio stuff, Rob and Tom from KB1WQK, and she also says he's doing okay. Legs a little sore. Yeah, that was fun. We my brother-in-law lives next door, and he got an old motorcycle, and this thing is huge. And we pulled it off of his trailer yesterday, and we pulled a few muscles we didn't know we had trying to get it off. But that's good. I got some footage of that. I'll make a video of it here at some point. Okay, so we're all caught up on the chat. Any more stuff we want to talk about as far as used gear goes? Where to find it and how to look for good stuff?
No, I don't have anything else.
Okay, I'm not seeing anything else in the chat either. So let's see what we got. I think our last topic is coming up. Okay, so our last topic is antennas, buy or build. And we talked a little bit about antennas already, and I forgot this was even on the list. But what do you think, Tom? Buy, build, or what else?
It's not really that difficult to build an antenna. As a matter of fact, I think I have. Let's see. Hold on, stand by. Yes. This gentleman, Simon, has a website and he has a ton of information about antennas. Just general description about it, what he's observed. This is, for instance, the G5RV antenna, which I have. Here's a discussion about it, variations, good and bad things about it. And like I say, he has a ton of information about software, about antennas, and check his website out. It's iw5edi.com. That's his call sign, I assume. He's over in Europe someplace. And he has a number of articles on constructing antennas. Some of the simple antennas are fairly easy to make. So check that out.
Okay, that's an interesting website. We'll have to take a look at that, see what he's got. First of all, I want to say thanks for stopping into Radio Wild. Looks like he's got to run along. So always good to see you in here, Bob. One of these days, if the world ever gets back to normal, I'm going to come down and see you at Sussex. That was the plan for this summer, but I don't know if it's going to happen now. Let's see. So as far as build or buy, pretty much I like to build antennas. Like you said, Tom, it's not that hard, especially for a receiving antenna. You can use almost any hunk of wire that you've got laying around and just throw it out somewhere. It'll work. If you just want to receive something, it doesn't have to be cut to the frequency or anything like that. Chances are it'll probably work a little better if it is, but if you're just getting started, then any piece of wire you can scrounge up, go for it. In terms of if you want to get into ham radio and you need a resonant antenna, I kind of could go either way on it. I like to build my HF antennas. I usually use wire because it's cheap, it's readily available, and it allows me to kind of get my hands dirty, so to speak, with ham radio. I mean, back in the day, we all know that you had to build your own radios, and even back in the 70s and 80s, you had a lot of kits and things like that. Some of that stuff is coming back nowadays, but But still, antennas are something that are easy to just kind of play with, and you don't need to go any kind of special equipment. You can go down to Home Depot and get some wire and some fasteners, and build yourself a dipole or a quad or a loop or anything that you want, as long as you've got the room to kind of put something like that up. So I like to experiment and build antennas when I have the time, and that kind of would lead me into, like, if I didn't have the time and I just want to get on the air, that's where I would buy an antenna. Um, and I guess typically for mobile use too, theoretically, there's no reason why you couldn't build your own mobile antenna, but it'd be a little harder, especially if you want it to look good on your car and not damage the paint or not have to drill holes, that kind of a thing. So when it comes to mobile ham radio antennas, I typically will buy them and use them that way. But I also have bought antennas for the house. I picked up a used 6-meter antenna at a ham fest that needed a little bit of work. It had fallen off of a tower, but it wasn't damaged too badly. I just had to replace one of the elements. And now I have a 5-element 6-meter DXers antenna up on the roof. And it works great. And I only paid $50 for it. It's normally a $500 antenna. So that was kind of the best of both worlds. I was able to buy it, and then I partially rebuilt it, so to speak, to get it to work. So there's lots of things you can do, but for general receiving, I like to build antennas. One of these days, I want to try and build a mag loop. I know a lot of people have had a lot of success with those. They're good for small areas, and you can tune them for the exact frequencies that you want to listen to, that kind of a thing. Have you done anything with mag loops, Tom? Have you tried that? Or
No, I have not, but it's on my list, top of my list. And this one that they've been touting, which is actually it looks like a piece of stainless steel wire in the form of a loop, and then it has the tuner slash preamplifier. And the problem is they're all over eBay, and they sell what looks like in the picture the exact same thing from $39 to $99, and I just don't know which one to buy. I don't want to buy $39 one and have it just be a piece of junk.
yeah, you got to spend your time researching that. But yeah, there's lots of options out there. One of the things I look at too is how much am I going to use it, kind of a thing. I was thinking about, because I do portable ham radio, parks on the air type of thing. When I'm camping now, if we go camping, my wife tolerates it. so I wanted to, when I was doing it last year, I was just using dipoles and stuff put up at the campsite, and that works fine. But I was thinking about a little more compact that would fit in the car easier and a little quicker and easier to set up. So I was looking at things like the super antenna or the Wolf River coils, and those are kind of expensive antennas, especially for a cheapskate like me. But my friend John that lives here in town, he built one, Wolf River coil clone. He based his design off of something that one of my YouTube subscribers had done and posted a video about. But he just took a piece of PVC pipe and stainless steel wire he got at Tractor Supply and made the bottom coil. He did a really nice job on it. In fact, when all this pandemic stuff is over, we're going to make a video about it. But that seems to work pretty good for him. So it's a built antenna based on a store-bought design. Now, it's not quite as rugged as the Wolf River coils design, and of course, he had to tune it and fiddle with it, so maybe it doesn't work quite as well. But I think you get 80% of the functionality for, I don't know, 20 or 30% of the cost, kind of a thing. So when I'm looking at stuff like that, I kind of weigh those decisions out too, as to whether I'm going to buy or build, kind of a thing. Now, sometimes you can build an antenna and it'll cost you more to build it than it would have to just buy, something that somebody put together. So, and sometimes that's okay too, because, it's kind of the learning experience of doing it, or just the enjoyment of working in your shop and putting something together and making it all work, kind of a thing.
I think you made a good point in the beginning there is it depends on whether you're going to have the antenna for receive only. I will build antennas that I'm going to just use for receive because they don't have to be perfect. But when I'm buying an antenna to transmit, I usually buy it. I have tried to build antennas for transmitting, and I never could get them perfect. It was always SWR was, a little high compared to what was advertised. So I typically don't anymore build antennas that I'm going to transmit on.
That's a good point too. Um, and I think a lot of people do that too. Is if they're going to hook it up to a transmitter, especially if it's something that they spent a lot of money on, they're they're going to go for the store bought one because they know that they have a better chance of making sure it matches and that kind of a thing. And there's certainly merit to that. Um, but yeah, if you're just receiving, it's not critical, so you can kind of experiment a little bit more. Um, one antenna that I just played with for the first time was a trap dipole. I actually bought an antenna kit, which was kind of interesting. I'd never done that before. Um, so it came with everything you needed to build the antenna, and it had clear instructions on how to build the antenna, just step by step. Cut the wire to these lengths, form the trap coils this way, that kind of a thing. Came with little circuit boards. Nice little kit, very inexpensive. It was only $25. But I put that together, and like you said, Tom, I followed the instructions. At least I think I did. You'll see a video on it next week. Um, I think I followed the instructions exactly the way I was supposed to. But when I put it up, it needed a lot of tuning. I had to trim it quite a bit, more than what the instructions said to expect. But once I got it dialed in, it seemed like it was okay. So it is an inexact science, and there's a lot of variables and factors that go into it. So yeah, your point being is, if you've got an expensive transmitter, you may want to consider just buying something, so that you're not potentially damaging that transmitter. Okay, so I guess that's probably it for that topic, unless anybody else has anything on it. And I'm not seeing much in chat right now, so I guess if that's all you have on that, we can kind of move on and wrap up. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm ready to move on.
Okay, so yeah, that's the last thing we've got. Any questions and answers, and just kind of a wrap up here. So like I said, I'm not seeing anything in the chat right now, so I don't see any questions from anybody out there. Any final thoughts, Tom, on any of the topics we've discussed or anything else?
Well, just in general, I really enjoy doing these shows with you, and I hope we can do more in the future.
Yeah, well, thanks for no, I appreciate you coming on the channel this morning. It's always good talking with you about this stuff, and I think people like following along and watching and commenting in the chat with us. And I in a way, I apologize for the timing of this. This is the best time for both of us, is usually on a Saturday or a Sunday morning kind of a thing. Originally, we planned this for Saturday morning, but my schedule got changed sort of at the last minute, so we had to move it to Sunday. But I realized that some of the West Coast people probably can't join in the chat live, and we apologize for that. But maybe we're catching some of the Europeans or something that want to join in. And I also apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning. We had a little bit of an audio problem, but that was all on me. so yeah, and again, but it's always enjoyable talking with you, Tom. The live streams are always a little stressful for me. Not a good live streamer, but it's good to kind of practice this. And the more I do it, and especially with you there to kind of talk to, it makes it a little easier each time. So let's see. In the chat, we've got a question. So Mosin says, what is the most complex antenna to build at home? Well, you could probably get as complex as you want. I'm not exactly sure. I know a lot of it would depend on how much area you have to work with. Some people are building, um, multi-band Yagis and multi-band quad Yagis or Quaggies. Uh, so those can get kind of big and unwieldy, especially if it's something that you want to rotate. So I would think something like that would be big or be complex. I've also heard of some people, some hams that have a lot of land building it's like 80-meter Yagis that are rotatable somehow. I don't know how that works, but you can get as crazy as you want. It's whatever your imagination and your engineering skills will allow you to do. The most, I don't know, the most complicated antenna that I've ever built was I don't know. I haven't really built too many real complicated ones, but my 40 and 80-meter fan dipole that I built, um, the antenna itself wasn't difficult to build, but I had to clear a bunch of trees to get it where I wanted it. So that took a little while more just to clear the trees and plan where I wanted to put it than it did to build in the end. Um, but there's a lot of plans and resources out there if you want to build one on your own. So you can kind of look those up and kind of plan it all out ahead of time and get the materials and figure out dimensions and things like that. Let's see. Joel says, "Have a great day." Thanks, you too, Joel. We appreciate you you dropping in. But I guess if there's nothing else in the chat, we can kind of wrap it up and call it a morning. What do you think, Tom?
Yes. One comment on the last one is my most difficult one was a quad antenna for 6 meters. And I actually had a carpenter build the frame for the wire. And then I added the wire and the balun. And it worked great, but unfortunately it was made out of wood. And so the weather kind of got to it after about 3 or 4 years.
Oh, cool. Was it a multi-band or was it just one quad?
It was multi-band.
Okay,
It was good.
interesting.
It was good from 6 meters to 70 centimeters.
Oh, okay. So I guess I asked the question. Well, did it have multiple elements or just one loop?
It had 4 elements.
Okay. And was it just one or was it like a Yagi?
It was like a Yagi
Oh, wow. Yeah.
with the instead of just having straight uh, elements, they were in the form of a square.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I built a 6-meter rhombus one time. Well, no, actually, maybe the most complicated antenna that I built was my 6-meter Moxon. Nowhere near as complicated as your quad, Tom, but I made a Moxon out of PVC pipe. And this was back before I was even doing YouTube, and I wish I had made a video on it, but I came up with this really convoluted idea of how I wanted to do it. And I had the PVC pipe set up and I made these spacers for the inside the PVC pipe, and the wire ran through the inside of the pipe. So it was all protected. I don't know. It was way overcomplicated for what it needed to be, but the antenna worked really well. I lived on a hill 10 years ago, 12 years ago. This is when this was. And I was running 10 watts on 6 meters and I was working all over the country with it. Unfortunately, when I moved, I took the antenna off the roof of that house and I dropped it about 3 feet from where I was on the roof. I couldn't quite reach the ground. Dropped it 3 feet, but that PVC had gotten brittle from the sun and it shattered. so, um, so yeah, that ended up going to pieces. Let's see. 74 ARB says, "The two of you are a wealth of information and cover a wide array of subject matter. Thanks for taking the time out of your schedules to talk with us." Well, thanks. We appreciate you stopping in. I mean, I don't know if we're necessarily a wealth of information, but and not my, I know Tom's a good resource. We'd like to talk about stuff and share our experiences, good, bad, or otherwise. So we thank you for joining in. It's you guys in the chat kind of asking the questions and helping to move things along. It makes it enjoyable too. Everybody is saying thanks. Let's see, 520 Menace. Do you experience much noise issues? Noise, well, I can tell you a story about noise. When I first moved into this house, I live in the middle of a 500-acre state forest, more or less. There's a few houses around, but they're all scattered around. They're kind of far away. So I thought when I moved here, I would have this super low noise floor. I was really excited about it. Put up my dipole, and the center support for the dipole was on the peak of the house. And I turned on my radio, and I was devastated. I was getting an S9 noise level on every band, HF through 10 meters. I couldn't figure out what it was. I spent a month trying to figure out what was going on. I finally went to the breaker panel. I shut off all the breakers. I ran the radio on a battery. I turned things on one by one. And I figured out that my kitchen appliances were causing all kinds of hash. They just aren't, they've got switch mode power supplies in them or whatever. Um, so I had to move my antennas. They're all away from the house, about 100 feet. I've got to run at least 100 feet of coax out to get to them. And that took care of the noise, just getting it away from the kitchen appliances and the rest of the house. I still get a little bit of noise on the noise floor, depending on what band I'm on, somewhat maybe from the wireless routers and things like that, whatever. But it's a lot more manageable than it was. So noise can be an issue. I want to experiment with a loop antenna at some point. I've heard those are lower noise as well. They tend to reject some of that stuff, but I haven't done it yet. How about you, Tom? Any noise issues where you are?
Well, yeah, I could do a whole show on noise.
Yeah.
I have,
hey, there's no. Oh, go ahead.
my biggest problem is I have right now in this room, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 computers on. I have a router. I have a switch. I have a couple Alexa devices, and it's just buku noise.
Oh,
And
wow.
and the best thing to solve that problem is good coax cable.
Ah, okay. That's good. What kind of coax do you use?
I use RG8,
Okay. But
heavy
just
stuff.
good quality.
Yep.
Okay, good. Do you
And
have to put any kind of ferrites or any kind of chokes or anything in?
I have to do on some of my other equipment, like the AC adapters for laptops. Yeah,
Ah, okay.
they're very noisy.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, my kitchen appliances, there really wasn't much I could do with that, especially my kitchen stove. I got that big fat 220 cord going in, and even with the ferrites, I don't necessarily think that was going to help it, because what it was is the clock and the control head on the oven are just radiating. Whatever, it's radiating through the wires in the stove. I wasn't going to take the stove apart and try and figure that all out, but so I just moved the antennas and that took care of it. So let's see, Norm is in there. Norm is one of the local group now here of hams, and glad to see you in there, Norm, this morning. I know you've had some antenna issues of late. Norm is kind of a new ham, not new to radio really or electronics, but he set up a new station over the winter, and he had a problem where he bought a 2-meter antenna, and it turned out it wasn't a 2-meter antenna. At least that's what Craig told me. It was a 11-meter antenna or a 10-meter antenna or something. They put an analyzer on it and figured out that it was the wrong thing. So I think they've got that all sorted out now, and I think Norm's working on if I remember right, an off center fed dipole for his station. So I don't know if you've made any progress on that yet or not, Norm, but I know Craig's been helping you out. That's good. Hopefully when all this gets back to normal, we can do a get together here, and we can have everybody either at John's place or up at the museum field, and we can do a nice radio day. So like we did last fall. But I guess that's it. We've been going for quite a while now, so I guess we'll probably wrap it up. Thanks, Tom. Again, it's always great talking with you. I appreciate you coming in and spending some time with me today on my channel. So thanks for coming in. And we got the gremlins all sorted out, so it seems like it's working. okay for everybody. And yeah, we'll look forward to doing this again, hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so I guess that's it. I'm going to end the stream. 7-3 to all the hams out there. Thanks again for tuning in. And well, I guess one last thing I'll mention. I didn't really talk about it earlier in the stream, but next weekend I will be doing a live stream at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. I'm part of the YouTubers Ham Fest, so that's something that a bunch of us ham radio YouTuber guys are working on, and look for that on my channel at 11:30. But some of the other guys will have stuff throughout the day. I'm going to be talking to SDR Play for a little while, and then I'm going to try and do a segment on used equipment, things similar to what Tom and I are talking about. So so feel free to join in there if you can make it. So 7-3 to everyone, and we'll catch everyone later.
Thanks for watching.